Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Noel Casler podcast, episode 114, I believe it is, coming to you from the beautiful Hudson Valley. I didn't open with an instrument today, but that's the music I made specifically for the opening of this podcast. Sometimes I just need to jump right into it, so I'm going to stop that, and I'll pick up an instrument later. But it's been a minute. I wanted to hop on here. I don't know if anyone's paid attention, but there's been some news recently. Most notably, President Biden has stepped aside. He has, passed the torch to Kamala Harris, VP Harris, a very beautiful, competent, intelligent, woman who sort of exudes a lot of what we need right now, which is unity and love and positivity and youth, because that's, I guess, what people were demanding. We can get into all that later. I liked President Biden. I'm a big fan of his policies, but, obviously nobody was going to let him stay the candidate. At least big media didn't want it, and big donors didn't want it, and money talks in our world right now, which is its own problem, but we'll have to deal with that later, because right now we just need to defeat Donald Trump. And that wasn't looking very likely after the debate, right? And now it is much more likely. And I feel that the momentum we've had in the last week or so is very important, and it's crucial to the victory. But we're at an inflection point this afternoon, and this is why I'm coming to you, and I'm going to put this up on my podcast or whatever as soon as I'm done. And it's because, Donald Trump is a master media manipulator, and he has not been in the news for the last week, and he's flailing, and it's driving him nuts. And he picked an awful candidate as his vice presidential choice, and everybody's dunking on these guys. And it's driving him nuts, because Trump's job is to stay at the forefront of the media ecosphere. That's the deal that he made with big media, right? That's why he became a popular candidate in 2015, because CNN learned that people were paying attention to a debate in July between a bunch of dorky GOP guys, because Trump was insulting them, and he was insulting, the moderators, and being sexist and misogynistic and racist. And that sells, right? We're a nation of spectacle now, and spectacle is is defining a lot of our political moments. That's why Joe Biden suffered from that debate, because people wanted to see him kick ass, which I get, that's natural, right? We needed to see somebody like sort of rhetorically slap Trump down, and that wasn't going to happen. And you obviously can't rely on the press to do that. So we need a candidate who can do that. VP Harris can do that. Trump knows it. It's why he will not debate her. He's terrified of her. He's terrified of competent black women. He always has been. I've told this story before. Maybe I should tell it later. But when I worked on Celebrity Apprentice season 10, or I don't know if it was season 10, it was 2010. So whatever season of Celebrity Apprentice, falls in that calendar year, that's the one it was. I think it was the second sort of season of Celebrity Apprentice. He was on it for 14 seasons. I can't keep track of the math. Who cares? The guy openly used the N-word, and MSM, NBC kept signing him up, right? So there was no secret that he was a racist. But on this particular season, his choice was between Holly Robinson Pete, who had won all of her contests, who was as competent, as talented, as as beautiful, and as just like, she presents so well that any CEO would trip over themselves to hire this woman to run your company. Like, you don't, she's a once in a lifetime kind of candidate in terms of what the premise of this show supposedly was. And in all the years I'd worked on it, she was by far, she took it the most seriously and did excellent. Most people, treated it like the joke it was. She didn't. So there was another guy her year in the finale who's Bret Michaels, who was the singer in Poison. Nice enough guy. You know him from the bandana and the Neil Diamond-esque Every Rose Has Its Thorn 80s, power pop tune. I don't want to call it heavy metal. But if I've told this story too recently, I apologize. So I was working on the Tonys with that guy a year before. He didn't come to rehearsal. The rest of his band was performing. It was Poison. They had a jukebox musical or something that year, and we were doing a tribute to that level of Broadway talent. You can read between the lines of how exciting that was for folks that appreciate theater. But this guy doesn't even show up to rehearsal. He doesn't learn his stage direction. So when it's showtime, instead of moving upstage immediately after, because it's a live show and there's all these set changes, so he's supposed to move upstage, which is towards the back of the stage. He walks downstage towards the audience and starts waving. And a stage manager turns to me and like, did you tell him to do that? I was like, no. And he's waving because he's surprised that people are clapping for him. It probably hadn't happened in a while, being the lead singer of Poison, right? So he's, in the moment. It was just fine. The scrim comes down on his head, a curtain that has a steel pole at the end, weighted, comes down, knocks him out flat. We thought he was dead. Like I thought I was seeing a guy get decapitated. He's taken off in an ambulance and spends a long time in the hospital with a brain injury, weeks or something. I don't know the specifics of his injury, but it was fairly serious, and he had some other health complications already. I think he was diabetic or something. None of that is a joke. None of that is his fault. None of that he deserves. It's not my point. My point is, he didn't come to rehearsal. He didn't do a good job, and he got injured at work, right? Which is not what you want in your employees. So later that year or the following year, he's a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice, and he makes it to the end. He's the only white guy left standing, and the other contestant is Holly Robinson Pete. And we had to have an EMT on set in case like Bret Michaels went into cardiac arrest or something during filming. Like I remember that. So, think of that and think of like, okay, you're supposed to walk in and choose a winner, and that's one of your people. So you get there and they basically tell him, what the deal is. Trump was not as involved in that show as he would lead you to believe. He'd show up at 4 PM when when he'd snorted enough Adderall to, attempt to speak, and that was it. And they'd tell him what they were doing for the day. So he shows up for this particular one. The producers tell him who's going to pick. He's leaving the building. Or going back to, the dressing room thing. He was getting in an elevator. This is how I remember it. And he turned to Keith Schiller and said, they want me to choose the N-word. They want me to pick the N-word, right? He says that casually, openly. And apparently he'd said it earlier to the producers because Holly, I think, had heard that. She'd done something publicly, and I don't want to drag her into all this, but that's who he is. He said the same thing about Kwame Jackson in the Apprentice years, and another contestant, I think Bill Pruitt, who was one of the producers, put that in a recent book. Now that his NDA is expired. My NDA never expired. I don't give a shit. Or if it did, I broke it long before it expired. Because this guy's a pig. He's a racist. That's been no secret. He's a mobster. He's an old school, Queens kind of, hates Puerto Ricans, hates blacks. His dad was a racist. His dad was a member of the KKK, got arrested at a KKK riot in Queens. These men are vastly inferior. That's why they fear immigrants. That's why they fear African Americans. People who are confident in who they are not afraid of anybody else, right? And they're not at war with other people. They actually want to dovetail their existence with those around them and make the best of this miracle that is life, right? Let's all get in here. What are your special skills? What kind of things does your culture bring to the table, since we're a goddamn melting pot to begin with, right? Unless you're Native American, you weren't born here, right? And if you were, if you are Native American, you got the raw deal, like the African Americans got the raw deal. So somebody who's still being punitive to people like that, in 2010 or 2024, doesn't not only deserve to be anywhere near the Oval Office again, or for the first time, they don't deserve any kind of public forum, right? So what happened today is Trump gets kicked out of the news cycle because of the Kamala energy and all the Zoom calls and everything like this, and he's flailing. He's pissed off. His job is to be at the center of the narrative 24/7. There's no such thing as bad press in Donald Trump's world. He knows it. The guys who are behind him know it. Putin and all these guys. Him being contentious to some black journalists, women journalists, it's not gonna hurt him with his base. And if you don't already know who the man is now and you're on the left or undecided, then you're a moron yourself. You're not paying attention, right? So what it becomes then is a political stunt, right? I'll go there. It'll obviously go poorly. There'll obviously be clips of people laughing at me. I'm obviously not going to answer the questions, and I'll just spew my lies, and they won't stop me. And MSNBC will carry it, and CNN will carry it, and they'll carry it live so everybody can cut clips and put the outrage on their Twitter feeds, and the Lincoln Projects and the Midas Touch and everybody who makes a lot of money off of what the latest, greatest, horrible thing Donald Trump says will endlessly retweet it, and you can support their PACs and sign up for their bullshit, and you can get the same media atmosphere you've had since 2015, right? And I know everybody's addicted to this stuff. I know everybody's fans of these people, and whatever. It's a business now, and that's the business model, and that's the same business model that never moved the scales for Biden, because people didn't know about Biden's accomplishments, because all they were hearing about every day was Trump's trials on MSNBC and CNN and on their favorite internet personality. It was Trump, Trump, Trump. And I talked about Trump all the time too. I've kind of stopped to some extent. I'm sick of talking to him. I'm not making a buck about this. If I write about him, I'm doing it something, I'm trying to make valid points in my Substack, and I'm giving it away for free. I don't do this show that often. I appreciate people who support me. This is not a business or a job for me, and I'm tired of this stuff, as I say every week. I got one appearance this weekend, another one on Monday, and I want to go back to the real life. And the rest of us can too. That's the point. This is a moment where we can change the momentum. You don't have to endlessly retweet this stuff and talk about it all day. And I'm only hopping on here to talk about it this afternoon because I know what the media cycle is going to be like in the next 24 hours. And that's what he wants. And that's what he's been great at doing, because there's so much money involved in the outrage. Stars get launched, lip syncing stupid things he said at his press conferences, in 2020. That shouldn't have been news every day. We shouldn't have had to witness that kind of insanity when people were dying, when they were being fucking piled up in freezer trucks in New York City. And this clown is having press conferences every day and acting like an idiot. He happened to be the president of the United States, so they had to cover it then. He's not the president now. He's a failed candidate. He's a, twice impeached, 34-time convicted felon who has a bunch of other cases that he's dodging because he put a bunch of stooges on the Supreme Court that are owned by the Federalist Society, and a bunch of billionaires who want to take away your rights, who want to punish the kind of people he was speaking to today, and continue to manipulate the knuckle draggers who support him, the racist, tired, mediocre, scared white men and women in this country that are like, why does it have to be about race? I heard somebody anecdotally responding to the white men for Kamala or something Zoom call. Well, why does it have to be about white? That's always such a comfortable thing for suburban white people to say, right? I heard a lot of the people I went to high school with when the Black Lives Matter stuff was really taking shape, beginning in Ferguson, right? Well, why does it have to be Black Lives Matter? Why can't all lives matter? All lives do matter, okay? That's not the point. The point is certain people are targeted because of the color of your skin, and institutionally, those people are being abused, and you're not doing anything about it. And when confronted with the truth, you're all of a sudden pearl clutching and, pissed that race is brought into the issue while you're sitting in your all-white suburb, right? Sending your mediocre kids to a decent school, while other people are forced to live in circumstances where they can't get ahead, where it's much harder, right? Where the playing field isn't level. And that's a lot of what Donald Trump is trying to protect in this country. The uneven playing field, the thing that rewards mediocrity, that allows you to hand down not just wealth at the top, not at the Trump level and those kind of guys, but the low level racism, the I'm only going to hire, white guys to work on my thing. I don't want any immigrants. Well, you're a fucking moron, because nobody works harder than immigrants, okay? We just had a bunch of stuff done here the other day, and I can't believe how hard these guys work, and I'm not trying to stereotype it, because that's the job they have to do, and they're doing it excellently. And I know there's other things that they want to do, and what you want is for people to come here, work hard, get a leg up, and then the next generation doesn't have to do the same thing, and we get to flourish You know, we get to expand upon the talent and the resources of this nation. That's the goal, letting people live their dreams, right? But now we've been stuck in this cycle of like outrage porn. And that's what Trump's giving you. You know, he's giving you these stupid things. He's a disgusting human being. If that's news to you at this point, you haven't been paying attention. You know, it doesn't have to be constantly retweeted. And I know I'm screaming into the wind because I know it's big business now. And I know, you know, maybe I'm part of it. You can see I don't have any AC on and all the windows are shut. So I'm sweating here. But I just wanted to say speak my mind on that. I'm kind of fed up with it all. I've had enough, and I don't think I'm needed for this part of it in terms of handing off the torch. I'll hand it off to all these TikTok influencers and all these young people that are excited about Kamala. Like, let them do it. That's fine. Like, I don't need to keep, you know, preaching to you about politics or whatever. And I think she's going to win without anything I say. So I'm not disappearing. I'll continue to speak out until the election and do my thing. But, you know, I'm sick of the daily outrage and just did you hear what Trump said? Oh my God, you know, it's all bullshit. These guys know he's a scumbag. They're making money. I've been in rooms with these guys. All they do is count the likes on their tweets. You know, I've been in war rooms with them. It's all about impressions and how well the hashtag is doing. And none of that shit really worked. What's working now is real. Right? It's real because there's a real sense of excitement from people who weren't paying attention, who didn't understand what Biden was accomplishing. You know, I read a quote in a New York Times article today who's still skewing everything against Biden Harris. And they quoted somebody who was going to VP Harris's rally yesterday in Atlanta, and she was like, I'm not into either of those guys, and I'm kind of mad at Joe Biden because he didn't do more on the student loan thing. Well, he did the best he could. He got stopped by GOP. No one else had even tried to do that, and he did. You know, so it was his policy, and he got blamed for it not succeeding because the Republicans. That's not a failure of that woman. She's obviously not that astute and paying that great attention. It's a failure of the media for misrepresenting it, and then they completely pulled that quote because it makes, you know, Biden look bad. But that's the reality. We don't have the most educated population in the world. That's why you have such a large percentage of Republican voters. You know, not that there's not smart guys who vote Republican. I know a lot of them, but those are just rich guys who don't give a fuck, who try to protect their waspy roots. You know, like the rank and file, lunch bucket, pickup truck, gun owning, gun toting, conspiracy, you know, angry white man Trump voter, you know, they're ignorant. You know, they grew up in ignorant, culturally deprived places, and Trump reminds them of their heritage, right? Because they come from long lines of this bullshit, you know, and it's time to end it. And a lot of people want to end it. There's a lot of good people in those communities. I toured all over this country. Every town that's like in Indiana or somewhere where you know there's backwards motherfuckers, you go there and there's also like a hipster coffee shop, you know, and there's also minorities and there's artists and there's LGBTQ people. There's all kinds of people yearning to breathe free and get over the bullshit in this country. And this is our moment to do it. So we can't backslide into like, well, this, you know, we're addicted to anger, right? Like when you're in AA or something, you can get addicted to being angry, right? You're not ready to give up your character defects because you get something out of it. And I guess that's what I'm trying to explain here, or superimpose on the situation, is the concept of like people are getting money out of that. If you get pissed off and retweet it, they're making more money, you know? Even though it's not good for you. It's like selling cigarettes or something. It can be reported on without it being retweeted, without you retweeting whatever stupid shit he says on Truth Social in regards to this. And I guarantee you he's having a tantrum on his airplane right now and sending out all kinds of tweets until he goes back to his private club in Bedminster, you know, where Jared and Ivanka have a private 4,000-foot cottage that they built during his administration, you know, if they're not down on their private billionaire-only enclave of Star Island in Florida. And they probably aren't because it's hot as balls down there. But not that it's cool up here. But my point is, you know, it's a grift, right? And you can't fall for the bullshit. You got to move on. You got to take this moment and say, no, I've had enough of that. I'm sure he said some dumb things. I'll read about it later, but let's move on. Let's talk about what we can do to get Harris elected. That's the gig. You know, that we have our marching orders at this point. We have 90 something days. To take the AA analogy further, 90 days is how long you count days when you come into recovery. And the reason it's 90 days, I've been told, is because in any 90-day period, all of the things that kind of happen in life can come up, right? You'll have a holiday, somebody might have a birthday in your family, you know, there'll be some kind of event. You know, every 90-day period kind of has all the things that you're going to face within a year. So you get through 90 days, one day at a time, you got a good shot at continuing one day at a time. You don't have to stick up your hand anymore and be a newcomer, you know? But my point is that's a crucial little window. You know, that's a piece of time within our lives where we can change the course of history, at least the immediate future of this nation, which will go off a cliff if Donald Trump gets reelected. That's what you talk about. You talk about Project 2025, and people have been good about talking about that stuff. I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm saying don't backslide into these habits. Don't make this 2020. Don't make it all about him anymore. Don't give him that satisfaction. Don't let your feed get dominated. And most of you guys probably aren't, you know, even on Twitter or whatever. It's, you know, it's a hellscape on all of that stuff. But 90 days, right? AA. You can do it one day at a time. One day, wake up and think, what can I do today? You know, who can I convince? Who's my MAGA neighbor, you know, that I could call up and maybe change their mind? Or somebody I went to high school with who likes guns and pickup trucks and lives in the woods and kind of bitches every time he drives to Yankee Stadium about all the migrants or something, but is also in a union and works with heavy equipment for a living and might be open to the fact that his kids might need an affordable education someday, or he might need his Social Security in a few years when he retires, or affordable health care, or not getting gouged by prescription drug companies, you know, because all that shit goes away if the Republicans get reelected. If you got a guy like J.D. Vance in there, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are writing up the economic policy. They're making it Bitcoin City, baby. And you're going to have fucking server farms in your backyard and fracking operations in your front yard. That's where it's going. And you're going to have Trump like, bring me your daughters, you know, like, and he's going to hand it off to Queen Vonky, and you're not going to know what hit you, as I've been preaching, you know, for years and telling you. And now that threat could be diminished. Why would you give it strength? Why would you give it sunlight? And a lot of people think, well, it shows who he is. People already know who he is. It's not your job to show who he is. You know, he'll find his audience, the people who want to hear that shit. And the people who know he's a scumbag know he's a scumbag. So that's my rant on that. You know, like it's Eckhart Tolle talks about like healthy people wouldn't consume this kind of stuff, all the violence that's on TV. I'm watching this show now, and it's just like this horrible violent stuff happens every night. And I'm like, why am I watching this crap? You know what I mean? You can become like addicted to the outrage, addicted to anger, and you got to be ready to let go of those character defects and embrace something else. And it's hard to do that at first because habits die hard and attention is addicting. And you know, internet is like a dopamine hit, especially if you build up a following. You're like, wow, look at 30,000 people agree with me or whatever. Who cares, man? You know, go outside, look at the birds, look at the sky, look at the trees, look at the bugs. You know, if it's your work involves that, dig deeper. You know, how can I deliver a nutritious meal to people in terms of their soul? How can I lift up somebody who's doing good work, who doesn't have a big internet following or whatever, you know? This just, you know, Trump will make a star out of mediocrity. Lots of people that you shouldn't know who they are, you know who they are because of Trump. And you can throw me in that that category too, which is fine. You know, this was not my intention. I didn't want to fucking do this. You know, I would have been happy doing something else. But I had to walk away from my career because I couldn't stand to not talk about what I saw him do because I knew there was nothing on the other side of it. You know, and a lot of people I worked with didn't want to make that choice. And I don't blame them. You know, they were like, no, I got fucking kids in college. I got a mortgage, you know, in LA. I'm in a union, you know, like DGA. Like if I talk about him, my career is over. You know, I was in a position where I could walk away. Not at all because I was rich, because I was not. Almost the opposite. You know, I had less to lose. But, you know, that being said, there's so many other beautiful creative things to do. You know, I sit out by the pond, I write, I do watercolors, I paint, I draw, I play music. You do that stuff too, no matter what it is. If it's your gardening, if it's listening to me when you're painting, if it's listening to the birds, if it's, taking care of your pets and your animals, do that stuff, because this Trump stuff is toxic. It's not good for you. It's not good for your body. It's not good to be this angry, and I'm a perfect example. I've been consuming this stuff for years on end, and, I'm tired of it. It's bad for my health. I'm tired of being raging out and stuff. That's why I keep saying, you know, I'm done. And people are like, we need you. Just keep talking through the election. Okay, I'll do that. But stop the bullshit. Stop making him famous. He got kicked off of Twitter for a reason. You don't need to retweet him. You shouldn't be on there anyway. Elon Musk is a fucking idiot. And all these idiots are coming together to make Trump president again. And now they see it slipping away. And they're pissed off because they're like, fuck, he got shot. Or lied about it, said he got shot. It looked like he got shot. He had something happen that made his ear bleed. That's good enough for us. For his sons, it was he got shot in the face. He took a bullet for democracy. Nothing like that happened. Tragically, somebody lost his life in the audience and a couple people got wounded. The Donald Trump I know would not care about that, and he didn't. He used the guy's fireman jacket as a prop less than a week later at his convention and kissed his helmet. That's disgusting to me. Trump doesn't give a shit about that guy. That's horrible. And you'll never know what really happened because Trump doesn't let you know what happens. He doesn't show you his medical records. He makes people sign NDAs, and I heard people at the hospital had to sign NDAs. I don't know if that's true, but I know that none of that story checks out, that Secret Service is just letting him stand up and wave after somebody just shot at the President of the United States. There's no way to know there isn't another shooter. Even if somebody yells shooter down, you don't know it's all one shooter. You get him out of there. You throw him in the fucking SUV and you say, take it your fat ass out of here, dude. You got people standing behind you who are going to get shot again, and you're waving like it's insane. So it looked very staged to me. I'm not saying he didn't get shot, but something doesn't add up. And the way he was talking about it in his convention, he kept saying, I looked at my charts, my beautiful charts. I just turned and looked at my charts. The reason he said it like that, and that's what saved his life, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I'd say that was his cue. That's what they told him to do. 10 minutes in or whatever, look at your charts. If you turn and look at your charts, you're in no danger, sir. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying all of that was staged. I'm just saying it doesn't add up, and he doesn't do you any favors by telling you the truth about it and wearing a stupid bandage for nothing on the side of his head and acting like he just stormed the fucking beach at Normandy or something. It's ridiculous, right? But he thought that theatrics, that theater, and the way the media set it up and immediately fawned over him. And I remember turning on the TV that night and Chris Wallace and all these guys were like, this is a new president. He's changed. He's spiritual now. And a spiritual guy is just sitting in front of a bunch of, black female journalists, black excellence, and insulting them. So he hasn't changed at all. He'll never change. He can't change, right? You have to want to change when you're as fucked up as Donald Trump to change. And he doesn't want to change. It's like getting sober. He's obviously an addict, right? It's the same stuff. That's why I keep referring back to addiction. You have to want to do it, and even then, it's going to be really hard. Not that there's not hope, and not that it's not worth it, but it's a lot of work, and it begins with humility and admitting you're powerless. Donald Trump is not the kind of guy who would ever admit he's powerless because he feels so powerless deep inside. He's scared, That's what addiction comes from. It's self-centered fear. And that guy's the most fearful person I've ever met, right? So even in the physical situation of getting shot at, it doesn't make any sense that he's like, none of it adds up to me. You'll never know. I'm not jumping into conspiracy stuff. I'm just saying that was a very theatrical situation, which was a boon for his campaign. And he thought he was going to glide to re-election, and the media went along with that narrative. And then it changed a week later, and Biden, in many ways, outfoxed him by stepping down, which I don't think, he got basically pushed out. I think the party told him he had no choice. Once the big donors were gone, once he'd lost Pelosi, it was over. And I'm in war rooms. I was in a war room with Pelosi, Christine Pelosi, his daughter, her daughter. she left that room a couple days later. It was weird, right? But you could tell a day or two before that something was going down. They sort of pivoted to Kamala, even though the party line was still push Joe Biden stuff. But you could tell back room they were trying to get rid of him. And you had the op-eds in the New York Times, and you know, he's a humble enough guy to be like, all right, you don't want it to be me, I'll be gone. And I loved his last address. I wrote a Substack about it that came out yesterday. In many ways, he was the last of his generation. He believed in the institutions. He believed in, democracy in a way that a common man could rise to the heights of power. And a lot of that'll continue. That's why you gotta reelect, or you gotta elect Kamala, make her president, VP Harris. But Biden was like old school in a way of a dying DC, right? That kind of Washington doesn't exist anymore. Now it's all about TikTok and, being a social media star and all this kind of stuff. And Biden was a star in the Senate. He was a star when I worked on Capitol Hill in the late 80s. He was a big shot. And, he served this country honorably and well. When it came time not to serve anymore, he stepped aside, even though it was still working. And I think he could have, I think the policies, could have pushed us continually further, but that doesn't end. That's the good news. And we staved off, I think the compromise, if any, was struck, was they wanted to replace him and her and go to like a contest and have this like open convention where you decide who the winner is. That obviously would have been a nightmare, as has been proven in the last week, right? Kamala Harris has raised, $200-something million, and you don't have the chaos. You're not giving them, the satisfaction, giving them, meaning the Republicans, the satisfaction of an open convention, which will be infiltrated by all kinds of protesters on the streets and all that stuff, which is, still going to happen. And those organizations are well funded, and their design is to sort of hurt the Democratic Party. Not that there are not well-meaning people amongst those things, but they're trying to play into the hands of Donald Trump by doing that stuff, by that kind of chaos. And I guarantee you Putin or somebody is funding this kind of stuff. The burning flags in front of Union Station, all of that is designed to make Democrats look bad for supporting Israel. And supporting Israel doesn't mean you support Netanyahu. Netanyahu's a fucking criminal, and he's friends with Donald Trump. He slept in Jared Kushner's bed, okay? Charles Kushner goes way back with Netanyahu. And I was writing pieces about him last year and getting called all kinds of stuff on Substack. I'd never been trolled on Substack until I wrote about Israel, and I was called I don't even want to, all kind of derogatory things, So all of that chaos has an effect on the political system. We just learned a couple of weeks ago that the father of the kid who shot him, right, was in the targeted group of Republicans that the Russians had information on, gun owners. It's like I always say, Jared figured out how to micro-target, right? He had friends in Palo Alto at Facebook and stuff from his years at Harvard, and he's like, how do I find the guys that own guns, work in a union, live in Michigan or Pennsylvania or somewhere, voted for Obama, but culturally they're not down with that kind of stuff, that kind of stuff, meaning liberalism, meaning supposed coastal elite kind of stuff, Black Lives Matter rallies, what have you. How do I pick off the cultural sort of conservatives that, that weren't completely gone to the dark side, that had voted Democratic in the past? And they found that information, and they gave it to the Russians, and they targeted them with misinformation. Hillary's running sex parlor, pizza joints, and, they're going to take your guns is a big one, and that's why Fox News every night is, it's crime. Migrants are coming. They're coming across the border. The truth of the matter is Biden-Harris administration arrested more people at the border and deported more people than Trump did. Okay, they just didn't lock up kids in cages. They didn't make a big show out of it. They tried to implement a policy that would also give rights and protect dreamers and protect, legitimate refugees coming in from countries that we fucked up, by the way. Central and South America was all, destroyed by American economic interests, right? When they always talk about, like, we're like a banana republic. You know what a banana republic is? A banana republic is where one product, like they have banana exports, right? So the ruling class is able to be manipulated by outside economic interests, to keep power over the people that live there. So they keep the wealth. They cut a deal with Chiquita Bananas or whoever it is, right? And the people are subjugated, and they'll have one crop or one kind of thing that they'll exploit, a natural resource, and one leader or one family will control that and be beholden to somebody outside the nation who's coming in to get the product. That's the definition of American imperialism in Central and South America for a long time. That's why the Panama Canal, this stuff's about money, big business, big money. And now that's all going south, right? We supported death squads in Central America, in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s. My grandfather was involved with a lot of that stuff, and, as a diplomat, but, I don't want to get into all those stories. You've heard it. He was in the limo with Nixon and Caracas and all kinds of stuff. Point being, we did a lot of fucked up shit as a nation. And some of that comes home to roost, right? And the environmental considerations will create even more migrants, right? So you demonize the migrants. You don't look at who's really causing all the problems, right? You don't look at the big oil and gas companies that are heating up the planet. You don't look at the Bitcoin bros, the Elon Musks that want to have Bitcoin and AI servers and all this kind of stuff everywhere, even though you're going to drain the water out of the states that are using them and further, tax the environment, and the infrastructure grid, the electrical grids, the energy sources. Like, that's what we need to change. We need forward thinking people that are going to realize that these modalities are done. The methods that we've used in 150 years since the Industrial Revolution have run their course. Fossil fuels are killing the planet, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. So if you're a politician and you don't care about that and you're getting big checks from billionaires, it's real easy to be like, screw all that, get a big pickup truck, get a gun, vote for me. We're not going to do any of that hippie bullshit. It's going to be drill, baby, drill, which is what Trump says, which is the dumbest thing anyone has ever said. And Trump's the dumbest man I've ever met. He flies his own personal 757. He's not the pilot of it, but that's been his plane since like the 80s. That's a passenger jet. That thing's designed for have 400, 500 people on it. He's flying it down with Jeffrey Epstein and a couple of cheerleaders to Mar-a-Lago every weekend. For 40 years, 30 years. That's his private transportation to go to Florida. He doesn't even have the class to get a little Gulfstream or something, a little private jet, which is still going to use a lot of resources. He gets a passenger jet because he needs to project his superiority and his masculinity, because we all know, he's inferior. And he appeals to the inferiority in the people who like him, the little dicked, mediocre Americans who buy that bullshit. And you don't have to keep serving it up to him. You don't have to keep being outraged by the latest thing he's said, because that is also part of the situation. They like that people get outraged and pissed off. He'll be smiling about it on his flight home, So you have such huge, huge issues to deal with, and you finally get a glimmer of hope. You got to take it. You got to do the right thing. You got to elect Kamala Harris. You got to do all you can. 90 days. That's it. And then we got to work towards cleaning this place up. Equality, human rights, women's health care. Iowa just had an abortion ban kick in this week. That is insane. I never ever would have thought that would happen in my life. There was always anti-abortion kooks because it was a wedge issue, and in the 80s and 90s, you'd get these freaks that would blow up abortion clinics and murder people and stuff. And they were the guys that, hung outside of churches and hated gay people in the AIDS era. I've been around these scumbags my whole life, but they were on the margins back then. Right? Now they're the mainstream. Now they're part of a political party that has a J.D. Vance, a fucking buttermilked face frat bro from Yale who lied about his upbringing, pretended like he was from Appalachia. He's from fucking outside of Dayton. His mom was a drug addict. Big deal. So was mine. You know what I mean? My mom went to prison. You know, I guarantee you, I missed a lot more meals than J.D. Vance did as a kid. You know, but the point is, you know, he's a fraud like Trump. Okay. You know, these guys are fraudsters, you know, and they get a little taste of money and they'll say whatever racist thing they have to say to energize the base. And they'll drag us all down for personal profit, even if they don't believe in this kind of stuff, you know. And they believe in hate, right? And they believe in money. And you combine those two things, it's dangerous, especially when you offer the illusion of power to the people who are following you. Even though they'll never get it, you offer them the illusion. You know, that Hulk Hogan speech at the RNC might have seemed like, oh, this is clownish innocence. What he was saying was, if you're a Trumpite, right, you're going to get to kick ass on the weak-kneed liberals in your town, brother, right? That's what he kept saying. If you listen to the words of what he was saying, he was like, you're going to get to be a bully if you elect this guy. You're going to be a badass, and we're not going to take any shit anymore because we like Trump. That's not leadership. That's violence. That's fascism, right? That's brown shirts. That's jackbooted fascists who, by the way, march in Nashville every week. Like, where is that coming from? You know what I mean? Every time I look on social media, as Saturday, there's a downtown rally of Nazis with swastikas on their flags. Like, what is happening in this country? You know, don't promote it. Don't go back to it. You know, move on. It's time to do better, and you have an opportunity to do that. We all do. So, you know, I don't want to keep ranting at you, but that's how I feel. Like, don't turn the corner. We finally got some momentum. Don't let Trump dominate the news cycle. Move on from that idiot. You know, a couple more months, we'll never have to hear from him again. 90 days. You know, one day at a time, and just let him go to jail. Let his trials go through. Let him finally be held accountable for a lifetime of criminality. You don't even know half the stuff he's done behind the scenes with Epstein and all these other scumbags. And perhaps if you hold him accountable, you can finally hold some of those folks accountable. You know, that should be the dream, is righting the ship and holding people accountable for their crimes, you know, instead of locking up people that are, you know, innocent based on the color of their skin, you know, and being bewildered when people protest that and thinking, why does it have to be about race? You know, it's crazy. All right, I had to pause it for a minute. Pick up my octave mandolin, bouzouki. Whatever you want to call it. I was out in Sag Harbor last week. That's why I've been playing this a lot. Reminds me of like something you would play on a ship, you know, coming over. Having a little jig or something, you know. A town, by the way, that was built on, you know, whaling, right? That's where all the money came from, like Nantucket, you know. At one point, that was the height of energy technology, was killing a sperm whale and, you know, melting its blubber into fat and then lighting lamps with it. You know, we killed these great, magnificent creatures so you could have the convenience of reading for a couple more hours or something, you know, in your little house. Like, that's insane, you know, and we'll look at that, you know, we look at that now and we're like, that's fucking nuts. Like, whaling is nuts, right? But it was big business. You look at all the ship captains' houses and all the mansions, you know, there's a lot of money in it. You'll look at oil the same way someday. You'll be like, I can't believe people did that. I can't believe they destroyed this beautiful planet, you know, with these other, you know, fuels after the fact, you know, after they found out they didn't need to do that anymore. They still did it, you know. That's when you got to change, when you know better and you don't. And that's what the Republicans are trying to preserve, right? They're trying to stand in the way of change and progress. That's what it's always been about. It's about stripping hope from people and marginalizing people and getting them to, you know, getting them to ignore their true selves in favor of hate and divisiveness and xenophobia and bullshit patriotism and militarism and violence, you know? That's never the way, man. The way is compassion and light and justice and making sure, you know, nobody goes to sleep hungry, you know, and taking time to enjoy the sunset and the flowers, you know? It's the end of July. It's the last day of July, as a matter of fact, you know? Go out and listen to the leaves now. They're different. You know, if there's wind around you, listen to how the wind blows through the leaves and you'll hear something different. You'll hear a crispness in the air, you know, in the sound of the leaves. And it's like, that's fall. Each season will kind of foreshadow the next one. There's all these little tricks in nature. If you watch the buds on the trees in early spring, they're always gold or like a rust color or a red color. That's what they're going to be in October, in late September, right? They show you who they're going to be at the end of their life, right? They sort of, and then they're green all summer and heavy. But right now they're, you know, they're making that turn towards like the fireworks of color. And I just think that's interesting, you know, and I think it shows how there's just patterns in all this stuff. And there's just some kind of like divine wisdom in nature. And you don't have to be disconnected from that in your modern world, right? You just have to like seek out the awareness of that, you know? You'll be better off, in my opinion. So I'm sorry to rant at you guys for so long. I have a new Substack I put out yesterday. It was about, you know, Biden's final days and the optimism in the air. And I told this story that some of you guys have been to my live show have heard. You know, I was able to work on both of President Obama's inaugurations, kind of the highlight of my career in terms of just like being at a cool thing. And I was at a lot of cool things, but not bragging. It was just, that was what my job happened to be. And that was so like unbelievably special. And I told a fraction of the stories that I tell about that day. But in this Substack, I talk about how I was standing there on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, and President-elect at the time, Obama, was there with his beautiful family, like behind this sort of glass enclosure where they were sitting. And I turned to my left, and I was standing next to Sharon Stone, and she was crying, and I was crying, and I was like, oh my God, I'm crying in front of Basic Instinct. You know, the 17-year-old boy in me who saw that movie in the theater, you know, imagined probably something else happening between him and Sharon Stone instead of crying, you know, and then laughing at the beauty of the moment, because, you know, there was so much love and joy in the air. It was palpable. It was hard to describe. And I turned to my right, and I happened to be standing next to David Axelrod, who was sort of one of the chief strategists for the campaign. You know, he had a lot to do with it. So I turned to him and I stuck up my hand. I said, I just want to thank you for your role in all this. And he put his arm around me and put his arm on my shoulder, and he said, turn around. And he turned me around, and we both turned around, and I looked, because I'd been looking towards Obama and U2, who was playing on stage. But when I turned around, I looked all the way down the mall, all the way to the Capitol, you know, like as far as the eye could see. If you know the National Mall, that's a pretty decent distance. And there was people everywhere, just a sea of people, faces of every color, right? Every orientation, every age, every socioeconomic background was there to show up, to make this country, you know, to witness this country making good on a promise that it hadn't yet lived up to, you know, a promise of equality, of opportunity, you know, of being judged by the content of your character, right? Not the color of your skin. You know, the part of the dream, Dr. King's dream, was coming true. You know, and people with love and harmony in their hearts were like, I'm going to be there. You know, I want to watch that. You know, even if it's 10 degrees out, I'm going to be smiling all goddamn day. And everybody was. That's what it felt like. You know, it felt like when we come together, we can do anything. And we're approaching another moment like that. We have another opportunity. For me to witness that twice in one lifetime would be crazy for all of us. You know, you're talking about leaps and bounds of progress. If we not only get a woman president, you know, we get a black woman president, man, that's a country I can get behind. You know what I mean? That's not something to be afraid of. That's something to celebrate, you know, and we can do it. We can do it, and we can do it in 90, in 90 days we can elect her, and by January you can have your own you know, inauguration story. But, so he turns me around. I'm seeing this sea of people and I'm feeling the vibe, the love that's sort of coming back in that direction towards the band and Obama and stuff is palpable. You can feel it. And I'm in crowds for a living. So you sense the vibes. And I'm like, man, that was a vibe, right? So he goes, I didn't do it, because I said, thanks for what you did on this. He goes, I didn't do it. They did it. And he just pointed at him. And I got the chills, because I knew he was right. It was like being on the West Wing. It was a magical moment. It was profound, and life is profound. Every day is profound. Every day is a gift. Every human being is a gift, even the people you despise. Even somebody like the guy I was talking about for the last hour. He's just a broken idiot who didn't get any help, and what we have to do is not let him create more broken idiots, right? We don't need any more anger. We don't need more divisiveness, right? We need healing. We need healing, right? We're traumatized as a people. This has been a tough bunch of years. Anybody who says it hasn't isn't paying attention and doesn't know how the human, psyche works, because this shit has been raw and crazy. And I guess that's part of the reason I got so angry when I saw people kind of doing the same thing today with the content. It's like, don't trigger everybody again. Don't remind us of 2020 and all this crap. It was wonderful to have a feed for a week that wasn't dominated by some outrage, but moreover, a chance at optimism and hope. Let's do that. It's time. Okay? We can do it. End of rant. End of preaching. End of show. Okay? Thank you for listening. I'm sorry if this was, more angry than usual. All I can ever really do is kind of be myself when I talk to you. So I'm just trying to give it to you as I see it. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. I know a lot of these people I mentioned, they all mean well. I'm just talking about what the ultimate cycle, what happens when we continue to focus on Donald Trump. It helps him. Even if it feels like it's negative, it's not. No such thing as bad press in that guy's brain. Let the next big press story about him be like he got his ass kicked. He got his ass kicked on November 6th by a smart, beautiful, competent, experienced black woman, and whoever her VP choice is going to be, So anyway, thanks for listening. Noel's notes on Substack, noelcasler.com. I'm going to be at Town Hall in New York City this Saturday, but part of a panel discussion with a bunch of other people. It's the Stephanie Miller Sexy Liberal Tour. So if you're around, come down. I'm not doing stand-up, just as a warning. It's a stand-up night. John Fugelsang will be there, and Hal Sparks and Frangella, which is a comedy duo, is part of their whole Sexy Liberal Network thing, and Ellie Mistel, I think it's Ellie Mistel, and a bunch of other panelists that are normally on her show, including myself for like a little segment. So, I'll do my own shows again someday soon. But that's where I'm going to be Saturday, and I'll be on her show Monday, and I'll come back and talk to you guys soon. So check out the Substack, stay safe, vote blue, and go enjoy the rest of your summer. It goes fast. You only get so many of them. God bless you guys. Love you. Peace.